Hi guys, so I'm joined by Brian from Anarchy Models, who have an ongoing Kickstarter for their High Speed Stencil System. Brian has very kindly joined me in the studio to take us through some of the basics of airbrushing and how to use these stencils. So if you're ever been wondering about introducing airbrushing into your hobby, it's worth watching these little videos. We also have some backstage ones where we're going into a bit more detail, looking at, what kind of airbrush to buy, how they work, etc. Brian, the High Speed Stencil System is on Kickstarter.
Yep.
We've already completed one where we had a look at this bad boy here, which was using the Dragon Scale stencil, and you showed us how to use some of the Vallejo Color Air series to create that beautiful, beautiful effect. In this one, though, we're going to go with a slightly different color scheme and show how the hexes work.
A more vibrant color scheme. Like you say, we're using the hexes this time, so the hex grids rather than the dragon scales.
Hexes wise, there's a number of different sizes so far to choose from. Who knows what'll be there by the time the Kickstarter comes around, from the large right down to the very tiny. So let me turn over just to show you the kind of what you're going to achieve from this little tutorial. So this is the color scheme that we're going to get. It's this kind of almost like firebrand hexagonal, almost like a living carbon fiber type effect.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
It's how you imagine it to be. It kind of almost looks like an energy field is sort of protecting, like a yellow energy field is protecting the ship, or like you say, kind of living.
Dissipating
sort of stuff.
Dissipating heat from the front edges and stuff. It is really cool. But it all starts with black. For this series, we're using the new Vallejo Game Air paints. We find them to be absolutely brilliant. But we're also supplementing them with some interesting additional products that Vallejo do, which is the Game Ink series, which are transparent kinds of paints that really, really bring this whole airbrushing thing to a whole new level for me.
They're useful for all kinds of airbrushing, but they're particularly useful for using these stencils, where unlike the HD stencils, you can layer on all kinds of different colours. With these, you've really got to do the stenciling part of it in one shot.
Yeah.
So you do all the fancy colours and stuff after the stenciling. So that's why we've gone for the transparents, which we can use afterwards. But they're also very cool for just doing shading on a normal colour anyway, which we'll show that in a minute as well.
Yeah. Okay. So Brian, let's get started. What's the first step of creating this Eldar machine of flaming death?
As you might expect, we're going to start off with the red. So we've got the bloody red here. So we're going to move these others out of the way. And I've already got it in the brush. I have used a bit of their thinner. One major misconception with the Model Air and the Game Air is because people see it, it's an airbrush paint, they automatically think it goes straight in the airbrush. Not the case. You always need to use even just a few drops of thinner will go a long way to helping break the paint down to make it flow better. And also, if you want to do a thinner paint to do lots and lots of layers for a blend, you can thin it back even more. But you do need to thin it a little bit. Nowhere near as much as you would a normal model paint, where sometimes you're even doing it 50-50. With this, it's just a few drops just to break it down a bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've got the red already in one of these. Now, red doesn't go over black terribly well, so it will take a few passes to build the red up. But sometimes that's good anyway, because you can get a bit more of a blend on there.
And it gives you a little bit more control over the highlights and the shaded parts.
That's right, so similar to the other video, you can see on the back we've got the light colour at the front fading to the back. So we'll build up to on the front edges, and also on the raised areas like these canopies and these round bits here. We'll build up those first, and we'll do that now.
So as you can see, the paint's going on, very light. It's almost not noticeable. And this is one of the things that I've found with an airbrush is it just takes a little bit of getting used to. I think practice, time spent with an airbrush is worth its weight in gold. You know?
Yeah, practice is always worth doing. You know, we've had people that we've been teaching, and they haven't practiced between classes, and we basically had to start again.
Yeah.
It's always a good idea to practice. But even before doing these models we're doing now, that's why I painted the underside first, just to do a test to make sure the colours worked well together. Sometimes you might think, oh, these colours will work great. They just don't work. It just doesn't look right. Or if you're doing a camouflage, sometimes the colours are that close together that it truly works like a camouflage, and you can't see the model on the table.
Yeah.
So with the models, you tend to do quite a stark difference between the camouflages, and even then, some colours just don't work well together. So it's always a good idea doing a test on something else first, rather than going straight in on your model. But so as you see, we've got a pass of red there on this side and nothing on this side, and it's still very black. And that's normal. The idea is you build the colour up, and especially red over black. Red isn't a strong colour. It's going to take a few more passes than normal. Don't be tempted just to not thin the paint and do it. It's just going to cause issues. So still do put a bit of thinner in there.
It'll be faster in the long run.
Yeah.
To do it with this a larger number of lighter coats.
Yeah,
so.
that's right. Yeah. Always turn the model around while you're working. As you can see here, this area here is much darker than some of the rest of it, and that's just because of the angles. You're kind of masking off some of the other areas. So now you can see, now it's got 3 or 4 layers on there. The red's really starting to show up now. Do a bit more just to brighten it up a bit. Once you've got a few layers on there, you can go a little heavier, but it needs the first light coats to give it a good stick to the model. Right, I think that will do us for now. So we need to leave that to dry for a bit.
Now, at this point, you want to make sure that whatever paint you put down on the base colors is thoroughly dry. Because working with stencils, unlike applying other layers of paint, stencils will be something physical touching the model and is likely to peel the paint or chip the paint off the model. So we're going to take a little while to let this dry thoroughly, and then we'll be right back. So we've let our model dry. Brian, what's the next step now? It's applying a stencil, yeah?
Yeah, so the next step is the stencil, as you say. Now, people are going to assume, looking at the bottom, that we're going to come in with yellow now.
Yeah.
Yellow isn't going to cover the red very well. You're going to have to put on so many coats that it's just going to make a mess. Now, you could come in with white first and do it that way, but you're going to end up with pink. So what you do is you come in with something in between. So this colour here, it's still very strong and opaque. It's going to cover red very well, as you can see here. It's going to have good coverage compared to yellow. And it's kind of got a tinge of yellow itself anyway. So when we go over that with the transparent yellow,
this is the dead flesh.
Dead flesh there. You could use a bone colour or something. This is just the first sort of colour I picked up. So we're going to go for that next on the fronts of the wings and stuff, like we've done on the bottom.
Yeah.
So again, the trick with these is once you've started applying paint, you can't have this move. So you've got to make sure you either tape it to the model, or if you want to do it quite quickly, just make sure you've got a good firm hold on it and don't move it once you've started painting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up with a repeating thing. It looks like it's out of focus or vibrating or something.
Yeah,
which might be quite cool.
Which might be quite. I'm just thinking, it might be quite a cool effect.
Have a play with it. So we'll start off doing the wing here. Nice red hand. So with these, I'm going to feather in the light colour from the front. That's what I normally like to do. You could do it opposite way around if you like. And try to have your thumb away from where you want to work on the model, or you'll be masking that area off. Yeah. So we're going to keep that up here well away from the model and try and have it as flat as possible, touching the model. So we're going to make sure it's lined up how I want it.
Now, a hot tip for you: whenever you start the air through your airbrush, don't be having the airbrush pointing at the model when you're doing it.
Yeah. Sometimes you can end up with a spatter of paint, so I'm just going to do it on purpose here. If you just see those dots have just appeared around here, that's what happens sometimes when you start the airbrush off. So always start the air away from the model, like so, and then come towards the model with the air on, and just paint on and off, leaving the air on the whole time. So we're just going to feather in the hexes from the front. When you take the stencil off, you want to take it away from the model rather than sideways, as you could drag some paint with it. So that's the stencils there. Now at the moment this looks very strange because it's a really stark difference and doesn't look quite right, but we're going to fix that with the next step.
Yep.
So next I'm going to work on this pod here. So put the stencil in there. And we're only going to aim for the very middle of the pod. The overspray will go around the sides a bit and do that for us. If we try and do the sides, it's going to not work because the stencil can't wrap that closely into that gap. So just add that like that. So like that. I'm going to do this other one in a minute once this one's dry. That stops me wrecking what we've already done. So let's go and do the other side. And you're going to try and compare this side to the other side and try and make them even if you can.
Even in terms of the amount of coverage, and just make sure that the pattern's
just where the pattern's the same, and also the amount of paint there. If you put a few more passes of paint on one side than the other, the hex is going to be brighter one side or the other, and if you don't want that, then it's an issue, and once you take the stencil away, you can't fix it, so you've just got to look at both sides if you want it even and try and keep it as even as possible. So I'm going to do this other side. Moved a bit. Right. So when the stencil's on there, you can't really tell exactly how much paint you've got on. So it can be a bit tricky. There we go. Just going to do this little pod there. So and I think we'll do the top of the cockpit. That so everybody can see. So here, where the stencil's flexible, I'm just going to wrap it round the top of the cockpit here, keeping it as flat as I can. Like so. I'm only going to concentrate right in the middle here. The overspray is going to go round for me. If I go right up to the edge, you're going to lose the definition where the stencil's folded. So I'm just hitting here, and that's it. You can see, even though I was just shooting in the middle, aiming at this thing here, the overspray's gone round the sides just enough and has not been messed up by the stencil folding.
It's enough to blend it in. Yeah.
That's it. So just a couple of more bits now. And do the front in such a way everyone can see. I have to hold it that way around, I think. There we go.
So a bit more vibrancy to the front, and then it blends in towards the back.
Yeah. So there we go. And while we had it on there, I did this front part of the cockpit as well. So the last bit to do is a bit I was leaving to dry, which is before I did it, was these two pods here, or whatever you want to call them. I call them pods. Yeah. Actually, I'm just going to quickly dry this top piece off before I do that. I don't mess it up. This is just the air now. There's no paint at the moment. Just the air drying it off. So that's that one there just done. And the same other side. So I'm wrapping, as you can see, the stencil's flexible, so I've wrapped it round this edge here. There's only it can only bend one direction. If you try and bend it in multiple directions, like around a ball or something, it doesn't like it. It can only go one way at one time.
Now, if somebody was so inclined that they bought a stencil like this, Brian, just for one particular army that they were going to paint, there's no reason why they couldn't cut the stencil to create smaller pieces that they can use.
No reason at all. We have got a nice, as you can see there, got a nice border here for you to hold. That helps with strength. But they are very strong, even if you do cut it. So you can see here, it's not going to rip.
Yeah.
It's a sturdy material. That's why we've chosen it. But it is flexible. I can, if I fold it up like that, it's just going to flick back into position, flatten it out. It's fine. So let's go back to the model. So we've done everywhere now. In fact, I'm actually going to do here as well. That's a nice place to do one. It's nice and flat. So I'm going to try and keep all the hexes in the same way.
Yep.
So it looks better, I think. You don't have to for these as much as the scales. There it is. So just that front edge again.
Yep.
There we go. So that's the second stage done, which looks quite cool. But it does look a bit strange because there's a really strong contrast between the hexes and the model and the red. And the reason for that will become apparent with the next couple of stages. But to start with, what we want to do is try and even things out a bit by adding a bit more of the red.
Yeah.
So it's handy, I've got two brushes. I can just swap to the original red we had and carry on. If you don't have two brushes, then you'll just have to keep changing paints. But if you do, try and work in a way where you can change colours as least amount as possible.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is just bring the red in here just to line it up a bit and stop the contrast being quite so strong between the hexes and the bodywork. So
this is using the features of the airbrush, and that it puts down a very light coat of paint to blend.
It's not going to cover all these hexes up entirely because I'm only using a very thin layer. If I layer and layer it on, it will eventually get rid of it. But it's just going to lighten what's already there. You'll see that in a second. So layering it on at the back here. If the camera can see it,
Yep.
So you can see here, this is a lot lighter on the edge than here. Well, a lot more darker red here than it is over here, where you have just the white and the bodywork.
Yeah.
So we're just going to do that. So all the areas where the scales have gone on, just to lighten them up a bit.
This, from my perspective, makes it look more like it's an energy field within the framework of the vehicle.
It's just helping the blend more. It's because we've had to go with such a stark, almost white colour to start with to get the yellow to bite to the red. This is just helping the blend go back a stage and just feather it in more. And a lot of cool effects with airbrushing is about different layers. With the transparent paints or even normal paints, you've thinned enough to make them almost transparent. But as we can see, if I can get it so we can see both sides, this side here, I think, looks a lot cooler than this side, where it's a very strong difference. So let's even that up. Because this is the original colour we used, it's just going to blend with the bodywork really well. So I nearly forgot the tail, so we'll just do that now. And it is looking a bit pink in places, but the next stage will fix that. Well, sorry, the yellow stage will fix that. Here we go.
Okay.
So, next stage, strange as it may seem, we're going to put a bit of purple on there.
Right.
Now, this side doesn't look like it's had any purple whatsoever. But purple, some people don't realise, but it's a very good way of shading red. It's already got a bit of red in it. Red and blue make purple. So it just helps it blend more. You could do it with black, but it's losing the tone. Using purple, as you'll see, works really well.
So it'll shade without that loss of tone. Excellent.
So in the same way, you could shade blue with purple. It's the same sort of thing. So it's these Vallejo inks again. I've already got some in that one.
So this is the Vallejo Violet Game ink.
So I'll just show on the test thing here. We've got this patch of red. If I do a pass of purple through the middle, you can see it doesn't actually, where the red is, it isn't purple anymore. It's just a darker red. And you can layer that on to get a stronger purple and have a different fade to the red. So all I'm going to do with that is just do a quick bit of shading. You've got these really nice deep channels here. They're crying out for a bit of shadow in those.
To really bring the low lights of the model out
just
again.
to make the model look more interesting and more three-dimensional. So if we going to put a shadow in down this crease here, you can see what the difference is when I do it.
You can start to see that.
So we want to try not to do too much onto where the hexes are, just in the creases. So I'm just going to do a few more bits where I think it's necessary. This step isn't totally vital. You know, you could skip this step, but I like it.
This is a step that's well worth practicing, because getting fine lines with an airbrush is quite a bit more challenging than your general.
It is a trickier stage. You know, you need to be able to do. Let's do it over here. You need to be able to do a nice fine line. It is trickier to do that than a big pattern.
Yeah.
So you know,
practice.
Practice. Yeah, more practice. So let's see, just a couple more bits. I think that's plenty for that. Actually, no, a bit more there at the front. There you go.
Well, that's
just
really
giving it a bit more definition around these engine parts here. So we'll just quickly change colours. Right, so next we'll be going on to the Game Ink Yellow. And that will give us our nice yellow scales.
Now this particular ink is like a magic ink. You know, the effect that it has on the model. Yeah, it not only brings up the hexagonal energy pattern, but it really does a very interesting thing to the overall vibrancy of the model.
Yeah, it's one of the good things about using the transparent is it really makes it pop, as we saw when we put the blue and the yellow on the on the other one we did before. And at the moment it looks quite cool as it is, but when we put this yellow on, it's going to make it look even better. So move it out of the way. So I'll do one side first, then you can see the comparison. So with this stage, we don't have to be accurate at all, as long as we're hitting mostly where the hexes are.
And it doesn't matter anywhere that the yellow hits the red. It's just going to boost the vibrancy.
Yeah, it's not going to change the red hardly at all. As you'll see what happens now. So just one quick stage there is already looking really quite cool. But once we really make that a really strong yellow by layering that on even more, you can really start to pop. The one thing to be careful when you're doing the transparency is don't do too much at once. Yeah. If it puddles and runs, it's going to look terrible. So do a few light layers rather than one really strong layer. Yeah. With all airbrushing really, but because these are so thin, it's very, very thin runny paint. It's easier to make it puddle and run.
Now, you didn't need to apply thinners to this particular type of...
No, there's no need to put thinners onto the into the inks. If you want them to tint things slower in more layers, then you can thin them if you want to. Yeah. But for what we're doing here, there's just no need. You just chuck it straight in the airbrush and off you go. So as we can see there,
look at that.
This side does look quite cool, but when it's got the yellow on there, and you've got the yellow as tinted this red at the back.
It's just binding it all together, isn't it?
Yeah. When you put this transparent on there, the blend just really pops out. So let's just finish that off. Really nice, strong yellow. There'll be a stage where it just doesn't get any more yellow because there's only so much it's going to do. And it's not, as we can see, it's not really changed the red a lot. It's just made it a bit more vibrant. So don't be scared about putting too many layers on. Just not too strong a layer at once. Yeah. Just, doing the tail now. I think that will do us. There we go.
What an utterly epic look.
It does look really cool, actually. I'm actually surprised myself how cool that one looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, a lot of what we've been doing, we've been explaining stuff as we've been going along. Actual painting time on that is just a few minutes.
Yeah, and if you chain painted that, if you had a series of vehicles.
If you had the colours in your airbrush and did a whole army worth in stages, you know, there'd be very little need to change colours, and you'd get a whole army done very, very quickly. And you could probably have a whole army of vehicles done like this in an hour.
Yeah.
You know, a big army as well.
Yeah.
It's just a few minutes per vehicle.
Well, guys, how awesome is that? Be sure to go and check out Anarchy Models and go and check out the Kickstarter where they have the high-speed templates or high-speed stencils up on there at the moment. So if this is of interest, you check it out. Also, Anarchy Models also do... they sell airbrushes and they're quite happy to give advice on airbrushes and stuff like that as well. So be sure to go and check out the website. Brian, thank you once again. And stay tuned, guys. We'll be back with some more airbrushing very soon.
Hey, guys.